So, Bryant, we have a special guest with us this week. So, today we have Eric Matisoff from Adobe. Eric is the senior evangelist for analytics and data science at Adobe with 15 plus years of experience working with data and visualizations. He works with Adobe customers and partners to help align their business strategies to the vision Adobe has defined for data ingestion, analysis, and action. He has recently written and released Adobe Analytics for Dummies, which I'll definitely include a link to in the show notes. Perfect. And you can find recent content of his on the Adobe Summit website, along with the Adobe Analytics YouTube channel. So, Eric, it's great to have you, especially today, because this is the debut of our video simulcast. So we're still getting used to actually also publishing the video with this.
Yeah, it was an interesting decision to go with starting your video simulcast when no one is allowed to get haircuts. So I do not blame myself for my appearance.
No, I'm with you. It's like it's all growing and flopping over. I feel like I'm back in college.
Yeah, I will not be turning my head.
What's your excuse all the other times I've seen you, though?
Come on. Who are you talking to?
You.
Both of us, probably.
Yeah.
Oh, well, are you talking beard or what's going on up here?
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, up here, I'm just doing whatever I can to make it look like it's kind of filled in the bald spot.
I've got that struggle too. But yeah, thanks for joining us. And the three of us, we're kicking around a couple topics. And the one I wanted to go with today is I'm currently titling this one, Make Every Day Count. And I can't take credit for that. That's actually Brian's title. So he finally gets one in the win column there. Exactly. So with the work that we do, it's very easy to fall into the trap of just checking the box, whether it's technical instrumentation or just analysis and insight. And if someone were to take a serious look at their day-to-day, I bet you they could find many tasks that take up a lot of time, but don't actually drive value. And then if you couple that with today's environment with the COVID shutdown, you're seeing an increasing number of talented individuals looking for work. So wanted to tackle the topic of, how can you make the time you spend every day have high impact and value? Again, making every day count. So, but before we dig into the topic, wanted to give you a chance to, I gave a brief intro, but tell us a bit more about yourself and your role with Adobe, how long you've been there, and what your day-to-day looks like.
Yeah, cool, Jim. I appreciate it. Thanks for the nice intro to me and to the topic. This will be looking forward. We'll have some fun. So at Adobe, my role is really to try to articulate in less words than I'm using now the way that our products work from a technical perspective, but making sure that I can explain it to anyone from the analyst all the way up to the CEO. So that's probably the most succinct way in which I can describe my daily job. But the way in which I do that is can be one-to-one, where I'm meeting with a customer and explaining something simple or something complicated. What is attribution IQ and what are some use cases for it, or how could I use that in my business? Or conversely, the true opposite of that is I love to present at Summit as well, where I introduce to the world the concept of attribution IQ on stage, while repping the Philadelphia Eagles. Go Birds. So, in between those, I recently was meeting with a CPG brand that, has dozens and dozens of brands across every country that you can name, and probably a bunch that you can't, and how they can, begin to strategize their move to a more data-informed organization, and to best take advantage of the Adobe stack. And what I love about those types of conversations is I get the opportunity to say, you know what, here are some things that we've just released that you may not be aware of. And I love seeing like the light bulb click on of like, oh, okay, I didn't know I could right click in Workspace. Versus like the similar conversation of like, and here's where we're going. This is a new feature that is coming soon to an Adobe Experience Cloud near you that will completely change the game. One of those was just released yesterday, actually, and completely flips on its head the way that Adobe and Omniture have been collecting data since like day one. We call it the Experience Platform Web Sdk. Hopefully, you both studied all the demos from Summit this year, but in case you didn't, the idea is, previously, if you wanted to launch Analytics, Audience Manager, Target, and the Experience Cloud ID service on your site, you would have, I think, 5 different JavaScript files that would need to be loaded, with a lot of duplication of code across them. So, Analytics checks the app measurement library checks to see what your user agent is and therefore device and browser. So does Target. So does Audience Manager. The ECID is doing some of that stuff too. So what we've done with the Web SDK is we've consolidated those 5 JavaScript libraries, completely rewritten them from the ground up, and we're saying, you know what? Stop tagging things with evars and props and events and mboxes and traits and all of that kind of stuff. Let's simplify. Let's use key name value pairs that are defined in a schema that we call Experience Data Model or XDM, and then that sends it up to us in a single tag. And then up here behind the scenes, we disperse that wherever it needs to go: Analytics, Target, Audience Manager, Platform, and soon to non-Adobe applications as well. So explaining that to customers over the last month and a half since Summit went live, and seeing the folks that really get implementation to recognize the difference that can make, while also seeing the execs get excited about a 2/3 smaller JavaScript library and a 70% faster page load time. They can dig it too.
Totally, yeah. I've been reading a lot about it. I'm definitely excited, especially I'm the one that tackles like the technical design and the instrumentation. Excuse me, the instrumentation of that. So it's really exciting to see, and I know I'm looking forward to sinking my teeth into that.
Yeah, it's a combination of killing a lot of tech debt, when it comes to legacy variable names and things like that, while also, forging a new path when it comes to the sort of hybrid on-page and server-side approach to data collection. So it's like, I don't know, I'm pumped about it. When we went to general availability yesterday, I got the email from Justin Grover, and I was like, awesome, I'm updating my launch extension now. I'm writing some like a super fast JSON data element, and then boom, now we've got popped open my real-time report, and I shed a tear.
So what are you looking at as far as like a timeline goes? Has something been announced yet? Because I haven't had a chance to read the information that went out yesterday.
We've got a pretty public roadmap as well as set of documentation when it comes to launch, but also with the Experience Platform Web SDK. I think we can share all of those URLs in the show notes as well. And so it's available for anyone as long as you have an Adobe Analytics account to deploy today. So I did it in production last night, and I've been toying around with all sorts of fun things this morning, figuring out how to populate, page name and site section and all that kind of cool stuff. But I think it's also going to be one of those things that if you're familiar with Corey Spencer and the awesome work that his team delivers, it's going to be something that you're going to see iterated on very quickly. They take the feedback that customers provide with them very, very seriously, which is why launch, if we were to go back, like a couple of years when launch first launched, then, you've seen such incredible pace of innovation. And I expect the same or better with the Web SDK as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, you've got quite a bit of experience there. It sounds like, Eric. What else do you do with your life?
Well, I've got a son that'll turn 3 on Sunday. So we're working on a quarantine party, which means that the local police precinct will be driving by with the lights and sirens blaring. So that'll be fun.
Oh, wow.
Which, by the way, if you have kids, apparently they really like sirens and flashing lights. So I think if you like a lot of towns, if you just like email the precinct, they're really happy to do it as long as there aren't any major crimes going on at the same time. And then I've got a 10-month-old as well. She'll be a year in July. Meanwhile, I'm here quarantined outside of my normal apartment in New York City. I'm in New Jersey at my mother-in-law's. We've been here 2 months to the day, and it's a tight space. 3 dogs, 2 kids under 3, 3 adults in a 3-bedroom. So, but it's been a blessing as well to not be in the literal epicenter of this pandemic. So I feel really happy to have had this as an option. Not everybody has had that as an option. I can't imagine, the energy of a toddler in a 2-bedroom Manhattan apartment right now.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to either. So whereabouts in New Jersey?
In a town called Northvale, which is in Bergen County. It's so far north. The people that live behind my mother-in-law are literally in New York State.
You're about 2 hours north of me.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Like basically a half hour outside of the city, but north. Yeah, gotcha. Northwest.
Cool. So right now with the COVID shutdown, the quarantining that's going on, what are some of the things that you're hearing from clients? Because a lot of them are trying to online has become the only way they can engage with customers, or one of the few only ways. What are some of the things that you're hearing from them as they're either quickly trying to shift either resources in the company to deal with that, or just shift focus?
Yeah, it's been an interesting time from a data and optimization standpoint, for sure. Both as an analyst / marketer, but also as a consumer. When things really started to get a little nerve-wracking around here, and everybody so quickly moved their grocery shopping online, that was something that we've been doing in my family for a couple of years now. Is we shop almost exclusively, through the Whole Foods Prime Now app, and seeing how each of the different grocery store vendors have had to adjust, whether it comes to bandwidth or what the experience is. The local grocery store here, they originally had you could book 2 weeks out, and then but being able to do that meant that it was basically taking their whole website and app down. You couldn't even log on to the website at all. So then they had this intermediate period where you had to get into line, where you were basically assigned a number, and it would say, okay, we expect that you'll be able to access the website in an hour. We'll send you an email. Once that email is sent, you'll have 10 minutes to log on and book your shopping cart. And then now they've figured out, apparently they got a better IT web hosting company or something. But what that's made me think of as a consumer is the need that I've seen across our customers that need to be more than ever in this test and learn function. They need to be, first of all, thinking about the data that has changed. First of all, you can throw out your year over year, conversion rate changes, because like, what is that giving you? Last year is a little different than this year of this time, but also I think it's a great opportunity to see where are the quick hits. Like I'm always a fan of quick hits when it comes to data, which is why, ever since I learned about it, the data associated with internal search, whether it's the keywords or the number of search results or the eventual landing page, the conversion rates associated with the terms, like there's no better treasure trove of owned data than the data generated by internal search. So like if for some reason you're an analyst today and you don't know what you're going to do with your day, open up your internal search reports and you'll have 40 things to do tomorrow. There's just so much information. What are the keywords that have 0 search results? Like first thing I do when I'm trying to find some like high impact, low difficulty solutions. Could there be anything easier than that? When it comes to analysis?
Yeah, no, like, I've said for the longest time, like the customers are flat out telling you what they're looking for. And you bring up one of my go-tos, which is the failed search results. See what people are searching for. And especially if it's brands or products that you don't sell, but you sell something comparable, the quick win right there is take, when people search for those terms, direct them right toward the comparable product.
Yeah. Yep. Give them something. Don't just say like, oops, we don't do that. It's the internal search version of no reply at mycompany.com,
Exactly.
Not fun. Not fun, but so much simple opportunity. And so I think that the customers that we've been, having similar webinar conversations and video conferencing with have been asking like, where do we have this opportunity to learn and iterate more quickly? And how do we make sure that the little upstart brand that no one's ever heard of hasn't completely killed our business in a month because we were too slow to respond?
Yeah.
So with that, I think comes making bold decisions, but testing them along the way. And I think that's a really important thing to be considering, is like, okay, just because the data is showing X doesn't mean you're gonna make sure you don't over rotate towards X, iterate along the way and put together a quality plan.
Yeah. I've been having a lot of questions from customers right now around like how to best use my time as well. So these quick wins, this is a great little tip here on the search. We've also had, a customer of ours come to us and ask to maybe do an audit right now of the data. I think now is a really good time for, looking at, how bloated or inefficient the amount of data that's being collected. It's maybe a time to look at that right now. And it's a really good use of an analyst's time, especially newer ones to a company, to really get to know what data is there. What are your thoughts on doing audits right now? And what are some of those tips and strategies that you would give to clients or customers out there in the space of auditing your data in a time like right now?
Yeah, Bryant, I agree, man. Like the only reason not to be spending time focused on data quality and governance is if you're not good at communicating the results of that data governance and data quality checks to other folks within your organization. It's very easy to not be a type A personality that likes to share proactively what you're doing, And Jim, like you mentioned it a little bit earlier, around, we've seen a couple of layoffs within the industry. I'm sure there's far more than what we've seen on Twitter and Measure Slack, but I think that's fantastic work to be doing right now. And you need to make sure that your manager and that your stakeholders are aware of the success that you're having making those changes. Like, oh, you know what? I wanted to focus in on ensuring our shopping cart data or ensuring our internal search data. And so what I've did, so here are some of the key steps that I did to check it. And then these are my recommendations for the results, and then follow up once those tags are improved a month later and perform that analysis that says,
Yep.
thanks to that fix that we have put in place, look at this great insight that we're able to derive in this change on our website that we can make or digital experience. Setting those kinds of things, like now is absolutely a great time to be focusing in on data quality, accuracy, consistency, scalability, and like we're not slowing down in terms of product features that we're releasing, whether it's from an implementation standpoint or from a analysis standpoint within Workspace. So it's a great time to also do some internal training too. I would assume that 33Sticks customers are thinking similarly or differently, or what's been your experience there?
Yeah, I think, along the lines of the audit, the other thing that I've really trying to been focus on with my clients that I'm working with right now is, really making sure that what is critical to the business functions, like in showing performance, is really being highlighted and really being analyzed. All too often, I think that people that have been in their role as an analyst or analytics manager for a number of years, they start moving beyond kind of those simple and 3 to 5 key business indicators or key performance indicators, and they start to add in all these other things that they can track for the sake of tracking it and building on it. And I think now highlights the need, especially like, talking about those grocery stores earlier. They probably don't care about some of these ancillary metrics of like, how many characters are typed into a search before you actually have the results that pull up there. They want to know, like, are people finding the products from search and adding it to the cart, right? And so just because you can track all of these other things and you can put all of these other characters or items into your data, you don't need to. And there's a cost associated with deploying that. There's a cost associated to maintaining that data, and really stay focused on what's most important, and make sure that that's locked in and critical. And then when you take those reports of that critical conversion funnel or conversion path, and you apply all of the different layers of segmentation. Excuse me, I'm still battling a little bit of a cold. Promise it's not COVID. I actually was tested for it. So, just so you guys know, you're not going to get it by listening to this. I've heard that that's not possible anyways, but anyways, I digress. So, taking those key conversion paths and applying all the different fundamental segments that come with Adobe Analytics, there's so much analysis that can be done just with, maybe a total of 20 variables, that people oftentimes get so distracted by all of the potential of other data that they're missing out on really what's most important, which drives 85% of their business. And that's where I'm trying to have our customers focus on right now. Given all of the furloughing and all of the layoffs that I've been hearing in the industry that have happened, I just want to make sure that people are realizing, you don't have to find the fringe to be that really important analyst or that really important employee right now. Be locked in on what's most important and show the value there. And oftentimes you're going to find some pretty interesting, gaps or opportunities there that, as Eric's saying, you can test, and see what you can do to improve that.
Yeah, I like where your head's at around simplification. I'm a big fan of like the three things when it comes to implementation that I've been yammering on about for years is that it's accurate. Okay, that's a no-brainer. That it's scalable, so that as you get new products or you get new websites or you get new widgets that you're selling, whatever, that it scales. And then finally, that it's actionable. So, what's the point in collecting, to your example, Bryant, like how many characters are in the internal search term if you can't actually act on it? And maybe there is an opportunity to act on that particular question. It's like, okay, well, we have to decide between, I don't know, internal search vendors. Vendor A says they can handle 200, vendor B says they can handle 50. It's like, okay, great. So collect that data for 2 weeks, perform your analysis, and then you can kill it because because you don't need to worry about it. So that's something else that I think we oftentimes forget about, is that your solution design, your implementation schema it can't be static. It needs to change based on the questions that are asked and the needs that you have as an analyst. It should be really easy, especially in this world of tag management and data layers and more processing rules, et cetera, to get a question and say, you know what, we don't have that data. We'll get that data in the next release, which is in 2 weeks, and then we'll have an answer for you in a month. I think that's perfectly an acceptable response to the opposite of that, which is saying we collect everything. We've got hovers on images. We've got time spent per, like website fart, like however much time is spent.
Time spent per product searched and product view attributed
right
back to, 13-page depth average intervals.
It's okay to say we don't have that data right now because it wasn't a question that was listed in our massive business requirements document. So but I think you have a great use case and a great question to ask. Give us some time. We'll collect it. We have so much data, we don't even need to collect it for every customer or something along those lines. And we'll get you the answer and we'll make a decision. I think that's perfectly acceptable. While at the same time thinking about like, all right, well, maybe there is a way to answer that question without having to do an implementation change. I think that's another thing that we often forget. No joke, I had someone reach out to me yesterday or the day before saying, is it true that report suites max out at 1,000 events? And I said, yes. They said, well, we've got a customer that would like more.
What are they not tracking then?
Right. And
well, because every product needs its own event, guys, for a product view. Come on.
So like that to me sounds like an education opportunity. It's totally. Like, okay, learn about hit-based segments that you can then apply to a metric in a calculated metric, and you've now gone from 1,000 to 900. Recognize that we no longer have to worry about the difference between, I don't know, like a success event that has sub-relations enabled or counter versus no. There are all these legacy settings that maybe if they're a brand that's been with us since, Psychatalyst V14, that maybe it made sense to use every event that they had. But like, can you imagine the pain of like actually trying to perform an analysis in their workspace instance where you've got, all the dimensions and metrics and segments that are there by default, plus an extra 1,000 events that, I'm just going to take a guess, aren't super well governed in terms of naming strategy. Mm-hmm. It's just crazy.
Well, I mean, talking about like making every effort count, and one of the questions I had posed as we were getting ready for this was, what are some of the biggest time sucks in analytics? And this is exactly one of them. Like, I could imagine this is a client where they feel that they can't do any kind of analysis. They can't gain any kind of insights until absolutely everything is tracked. It's this paralysis state where they're constantly instrumenting, and they feel like there's always a data gap, so they can't move forward. So they're wasting their time instrumenting everything possible instead of actually learning with what they already have.
Yeah. You like, a conversation that comes up all the time is like, why is Adobe Analytics harder to implement than other solutions? And more and more, I'm getting to this place of like, I don't think it really is harder. I think people see the flexibility and say like, okay, well, I gotta push everything in there, man. Like,
Yep.
if I'm not using all three of my list bars, what's the point of breathing? You know,
Yep.
Exactly.
Whereas, you know, like, okay, sure, S.products is complicated, but like, you're collecting a complicated amount of data associated with it. So I think there needs to be some balance of recognizing that. I don't know, like, if I were to give you a relatively basic e-commerce website today with, you know, with a decent data layer already applied, like, how quickly do you think you get some useful Adobe Analytics data to be sent in that you know, I'd be able to analyze in a few weeks or a month?
I mean, I could probably get something wired up in a weekend. You know, if
Right.
you think about it, you know, the key things we already talked about: search and how important that is. How are people finding the products?
Mm-hmm.
And then where are they adding to cart?
Yeah.
And
I
then,
think,
you know, and the conversion data too. So what are they purchasing? But
Yeah.
like those three behaviors: search, finding a product, and where are they adding it to cart, will tell you barriers to any kind of, you know, starting checkout and conversion.
Yeah.
well, and you three are talking about all of the custom stuff, right? I think a lot of times what is so often overlooked with Adobe Analytics is that the base reporting of just getting the tag on all of the pages gives you more than what Google Analytics gives you. And it's the same level of effort to put, you know, that code on every page as it is for Google. And I think where the complexity and people say it's so hard to do is, you know, sometimes a fault of the agency or consultancy that's helping them deploy it in overcomplicating a situation for, again, justification of a role, right? If you know, I'm a consultant and I'm supposed to use 500 hours of time to deploy this solution, you better bet I'm going to make it, you know, complicated to do so that I've got all of the time, you know, spent on it. I can justify the bill that I'm sending out there for implementing. Whereas, you know, if you take it in a phased approach and you say, okay, we're going to match what you have in Google or whatever vendor, you know, you're transferring from first, and within 1 week, we're going to get you base tagging in place. And then the second week, we're going to get your 3 key performance indicators, you know, tagged. And then the third week, we're going to get the micro conversions that lead to those, you know, key performance indicators, so you can build your funnels. Within 1 month, you know, they're going to have a more robust reporting system and a more, you know, more advanced set of features with Analysis Workspace than they could ever dream with. And again, back to one of my earlier points around, like, you know, yeah, you've got all of these other things that you can do from analysis and do it. You know, you get 2 analysts in there with just what I outlined there in those first 3 to 4 weeks. And, you know, you've got 6 months worth of analysis and dashboarding and reporting that is going to be feature rich, visually rich with Adobe, you know, and really just add a ton of value there. And I think the message that I would put out there to most people is just, you know, don't justify your job through the complexity that you can make it, and justify your job through the simplicity of how you can take those complex situations and how simple you can explain the data out of it. And that to me is the true barometer of identifying, you know, who is really a veteran in the space, who is really effective in the space. And it's those that can distill these very complex tracking mechanisms down into a simple visual or a simple report and analysis that really calls out that key finding and that insight that we need to take action on.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it much better myself. I totally agree. Yeah, like been thinking about that customer with a need for more than 1,000 events.
I remember, so this was so long ago. I don't think it's wrong of me to call out a specific name brand, but this is almost 15 years ago when I was working at Omniture, and Dell Computers was considering Omniture, and we were actually deploying Omniture on Dell. I mean, I can say this because I know their implementation is much more advanced and they're getting so much out of it. But
let's hope. Yeah.
At the point in time we were deploying for them, they wanted more variables, and they wanted it for the sake of having it. And I know that they, as a company, have all sorts of things that they do on the back end that they're collecting it. But, it just kind of, it reminded me, in this whole scenario, like those scenarios where you're working with that client and you wonder, okay, well, what are you really trying to do with your job? And is it justification of your job, or is it showing the value of the data that's there? And I think in our industry, we've, in all of marketing technology, I'm not just talking analytics, there's so much software out there that is just added weight for the sake of being there. And right now during COVID, I'm seeing some of that contract, which is a good thing in this sense that companies are taking a serious look at their marketing and stack and saying, what do we really need and what do we don't need? And if you're in a position where you've been justifying your job out of just being, overly complicated, I recommend you rethink that and really look at what's important and how you're actually moving the needle in the right way.
Quick disclaimer, Dell, we love you as a customer. Thank you.
Dell is awesome. Like, I've actually worked with them since then when I was at Adobe. And I know some of the consultants that are working with them now, and they actually use a huge amount of really advanced features that, I've actually never seen other customers exploit some of the features in a way that Dell has. So, but it just reminded me back then, whomever that might be.
Yeah, I guess what an interesting point to that last comment is that there's the workspace is so flexible that there's 3 different ways to skin every cat that you come up with. If your company is getting close to using all 1,000 events, then that probably means you haven't looked at the built-in activity map dimensions that are there by default. You put the code on your page, you've got activity map on there. Now you're seeing the links that users are clicking automatically. You're seeing the pages that they're clicking from. You're seeing all this useful information that will probably cover like half of your link click, at least, questions that you're asking.
Yeah.
And so, that's what I love about, my job, but also one of the reasons that I wanted to write this book is, there's more and more ways to do things. And the more I can share that information, whether it's through a video, a book, a webinar, a video podcast where I need a haircut or whatever, the more ways we can share, to our colleagues and peers and other folks in the industry, the more value everyone's going to get.
Yeah, it's just fascinating to me when you actually get in and start talking to the clients and see how they use it. And you're in a position where you're interfacing between, a marketing organization and a product management organization. Like that's kind of your role. And so you actually get to see how customers use a tool versus how product engineering designed a tool to be used, and be able to show some of that feedback.
Oh, dude, I love watching the way people use. I love watching the way people use products in general. Like, I love being on the subway back when I used to go on it a few years ago, when feels like, at least, and like see the way people use their phones, while I'm glancing over their shoulder. It's like, Oh, huh. So they're the one person that triple clicks their home button on their iPhone or something like that. Like, compared to like how my wife uses her phone or my mother-in-law, et cetera, like all these different things. Like then if you like, to your point, getting to then compare that to work, like, it's a great opportunity for me to say, like, you may be doing it this way, but did you know you've got these other options? And again, like seeing that light bulb turn on is a whole lot of fun, and it happens to me all the time too. Jen Lasser on the team yesterday or the day before showed me something else to right click, which is the line graph in Workspace. So you can right click a line graph and you can, I think, copy that as an image to your clipboard or save it as an image, which I had no idea was possible.
You were screen
before.
grabbing it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's like, there's so many little things. Another fun little fact that I learned literally in the middle. Are you guys familiar with the Insider Tour?
I vaguely familiar with that. So
Sure. Quick concept. It's a half-day event for free that we've put on for now 3 years, that we tour around the country, around the world, to just kind of have product experts share tips, tricks, best practices. Jen, Ben Gaines, and I have done a ton of them where we're spend 2.5 hours, really diving deep into tips and tricks. Then we'll talk about like a little bit of roadmap session. Have like actually last year we did this cool thing where we had the audience provide us with their preferences on like upcoming ideas that aren't even on the roadmap yet, that are just like ideas that UX came up with. I think we called it like design the product or something like that, where they like voted it in person to say like, okay, you know what, we want to do this instead of this. I think this is more valuable. So that's really fun. But in the middle of one of those events, Jen was presenting something about cohort tables, and I was watching. I was like, really? Is that possible? And then, Jen's like PowerPoints, it was an animated GIF, and it showed like in a cohort table results, I've always known you can right click a cell and create a segment. What I didn't know is you can highlight multiple cells and right click that and create a segment on multiple cells, which I thought was so cool and so useful and like such a no-brainer, but I just simply never done it before. And so I think there's an unlimited amount of information we can all be learning. And to get a little bit towards, the topic you're talking a little bit about as well, Jim, around, how can we take advantage of, the working from home, the less time we have in the car or the train or whatever to get to and from the office. Spending a little bit of time like learning the basics, or reading through the release notes, or watching some of the videos on the YouTube channel, things like that. Great way to really, make the most of every minute, make every analysis count, make every moment count.
Every second count.
Yeah.
You made me think of something though, real quick here. While you're on the subway, on the train there, and watching people use their phone. Have you ever seen those people that have like the crab leg fingers, and they can type so fast with their two thumbs that they look like little sea creatures with the long legs?
Yeah, it's called Generation Z.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I see those people every once in a while at a stoplight, and they're like just frantically getting a message out. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing? You're driving, But anyways, that's fun.
Yeah. It's a little safer to do on the subway, though it requires two hands. So if you're standing, it's an exciting feat to behold.
Nice.
So I know our time is running short. So to start wrapping up, I thought I'd ask you both to a question. What is one thing, like if you were talking to a client, and what is one thing that you can think of that you could tell them to say, stop doing this now, it actually provides you no value?
Who do you want to go first?
Whoever wants to go first.
Well, I'll jump. I'll bite. And it's actually the reason that I got into web analytics specifically. My first job as an analyst at a digital marketing agency was heavily focused on media analysis. I'll put analysis in quotes. See, we're making use of the medium here.
Yep.
I got this job and I was like, cool, this is a fun ad agency that I'm working for. What am I going to be doing? Like, I love data, and my previous job was all focused on implementing and deploying BI tools. So my daily, weekly, and monthly job was to build monthly reports, period. And it was hard work. I was pulling data out of MSM because Bing didn't exist yet. I was pulling data out of Yahoo and Google and,
Overture,
Atlas.
paid clicks. Was there Overture, or was this post
Probably.
Overture? Okay.
Yeah, there's probably Overture too. And pulling data out of all of the, Atlas ad server and Google ad server and all of these different things. And I spent 3 weeks every month just like VLOOKUPing the crap out of it. And it was tiring. And what I would do, I would just have no time for any actual analysis. It was like, all right, let me put it into this Excel format that looks nice and pretty, and then I'm going to send it over to the account person. They're going to have a week's worth of edits for me to make. And, I was really young in my career. I didn't know that, all of that monkeying around with the data was valuable, but I was spending too much time doing it. So what I started to do is I like slowly started automating it. It was like before you could log into those engines with APIs or anything like that. So I was like having it just automatically send it into an FTP or send it to an email, and then I would drop it into an FTP. And I took like that 3 weeks worth of work and brought it down to 3 days. Then another analyst on the team left the company, so I got his work, and then I do the same thing. And I took his 3 weeks worth of work and I brought it down to 3 days, and now I had 6 days worth of work. And it was boring to me because I wasn't able to do any analysis. And instead of doing what I probably should have done, which was, analyze, I decided I was going to teach myself something. And that's when I taught myself Web Trends and Omniture and Urchin. And that's how I ended up, moving from media analysis to web analysis. So I think that if there's one thing to stop doing, it's, monthly reports or quarterly reports that there isn't any analysis performed on. It's just, reports. So look for opportunities to align the data with the targets that you set at the beginning of the campaign, and seeing and recognizing where you are when it comes to that targeted goal, and figure out why you either hit the goal or are below or trending above it, etc. And then at the same time, think about the levers that you can apply to affect it. So that's my long-winded answer. Hopefully useful.
Yeah, I love that. I love that answer, to be honest. It reminds me of some of the early kind of dashboarding projects that I would get involved in, and building reports, which has a lot of value now in my career in knowing the things I know about Excel and how to do data manipulation in Excel that I never would have been able to do had I not gotten this crazy report of like, hey, build this slider in Excel so the graph will dynamically change. And, you become an Excel programmer during that time of your career. But, the point that you're making, I think, is that, if you're spending that much manual time updating a report just for the sake of a report, and then it goes to some other box, of, you know, somebody that may or may not see it and get any insight out of it, that's what you ought to be looking to kill. If you are stuck in that, though, there's actually a tool out there. I'm gonna pimp a tool right now. It's called Autohotkey. I don't know if you've ever heard of it here, but it's a little scripting language that you can actually, if there's a monotonous process you're going through, you can program Autohotkey to basically move your mouse and do all of the keystrokes.
Ooh.
So cool. That you can eliminate some of your own manual work on that. So that's kind of a cool thing. But
2007 Eric would have really appreciated that. Thanks, Bryant.
Well, I am looking for a time machine right now, so
cool.
You know, we can bring that information to you as soon as we get the time machine built. So,
awesome.
I would actually just build on what Eric stated, and you know, I know we're short on time here, so I'll be quick. But in that report, again, if because some of these people they can't get out of doing what their boss has told them to do, so make it a point then. You know, if you're doing that monthly report and it takes you 3.5 weeks to build, which is a legitimate thing that I've seen happen, and is still happening, you know, out there. Take that last half part of your week and take one section of that report, be it that one trend line that shows everything or the one table that shows some contextual data, and analyze it. You know, those reports have so much information there. Oftentimes it's been the culmination of, you know, 5 different analytics managers that have decided what they want, and then another stakeholder that's moved on, but we're still, you know, getting those reports in there because this other person wanted it at one point. Take one of those reports or the sections of that report and apply a different segment to it in Workspace. Look at it in a different way than you have before. Look at some week over week data, look at day over day of the same year. Again, Eric kind of mentioned that might not make a lot of sense right now because we're in unprecedented data collection times right now, but do something different with it and try and tease something out of the data that you haven't done before. And you might find something, you might not, but at least you're honing a new skill, and you're learning something new about your own craft as an analyst. And then you are going to find something. Eventually, you will find something that comes to light from one of those reports, and you can share that out with somebody that cares, to actually initiate a new project for yourself and actually lead out on, you know, running a test to improve something and you know, making something more of just the report itself.
Yeah. Your comment there is like go a little further. There's, you know, not everyone's going to be in the position to go a little shorter as well.
Yeah.
Like, you know, talking about my BI days reminds me of, you know, when some of the BI vendors would charge like per report that could be created or something like that.
Right.
And so something we would do is in order to find out whether anyone was using the report, we would just hide access to it and see if anyone complained.
Yeah.
So consider doing that as well. If you're in a position to do it without, you know, any repercussions, is
hide a tab of that sheet.
Yeah. See, and it may be that it's actually not that useful. You could do the same thing with an implementation, you know, remove some dimensions that you don't think are useful personally, just hide them from your user's access if you're an admin, and, you know, see if anyone complains.
Yeah. Start finding ways to get creative there. Don't do it like Eric would, where you're like, you know, hey, we're going to hide revenue for a few days, see if anybody notices, you know, like, well, you know, we'll see how we get by with that, you know.
Yeah. Be tactful.
This has been a fun conversation, Eric.
Yeah, this has been awesome. So really appreciate you joining us, you know, taking the time to come chat.
Yeah, it was fun for me too. Good to hang out with you guys as virtually as is allowed right now.
Exactly. Cool. Well, you know, again, thank you much, and we'll catch everybody later.
All right, cool.
See you.
See y'all.